Good morning, Stanley. Ooh, my weekend was nice and cozy, cuddling up with my family members. So yeah, now we can do it openly. Yay!
Yay! Happy for you too.
Thank you. I hope
Welcome.
you had a good one too. You and Weilin. Hi, Weilin.
Hi, Maxine.
Welcome
Thanks for
back.
joining us again.
Yeah,
No,
we
My
missed you.
pleasure. Yeah,
well,
you had a good break, right, Weilin? We had
yes,
Susan last
it was
week.
excellent, and I'm so keen to find out more about the benefits of
Oh yeah.
managing up. Is it actually about getting your boss to do what you want him or her to do?
I like the way you phrased the question. Let's define the words managing up. I think most of us, we are always keen as managers or leaders to know how to manage down, manage our staff. And many individuals, working professionals, somehow victimize themselves that they are constantly being managed by their bosses. So simply put, managing up is like what you said, managing your boss, and not really like telling him or her what to do. There are certain things involved, which I'll be happy to share some tips on what can you do to better manage your boss to help him or her help you to proceed and advance in your career. So yeah, there you go. That's managing up.
Is there any part of it that's about manipulation?
Oh, you mean manipulation from our point of view when we manage up?
Yeah.
I like the way you asked in this tone as well. Well, there's a fine line between influencing versus manipulating. So if I define the influencing, it's the ability to get someone to do something and they think that it is their own idea. Dun, dun, dun. And that's where it could be perceived as brainwashing or manipulation by others. But in the context of the workplace, there are powerful, practical, and professional ways to influence your boss as you manage him or her without coming across as manipulation, which is typically with a negative connotation. That means managing up should be with the right intention to help your boss to help you to advance. Manipulation is more of to get someone to do something that's really bad against values that's probably even illegal. Would that make sense?
Yeah. But also when you talk about managing up, do we only think about needing to do this when things aren't going so well, when we have a boss that's not competent in the work that's ahead of him or her? Or do we have to keep at it with managing up even in good times?
The simple answer is managing up is a constant process. It's not when things go wrong. So the moment you start on a job, or even right now, if you're in the middle of the job for years, it's never too late to start. So let's define and give some examples of managing up. I think due to the short time, we just share a couple of points. First of all, managing up is constantly working on your relationship with your boss. Especially with the current COVID-19 situation, a lot of people are complaining that, no, now I'm physically distanced from my boss. It's even harder to build relationship. But let me ask all our listeners, even in good times in the past, when you were physically perhaps even next door to your boss, how close were you? So most of the time, it's not because of physical distance. It's because of emotional distance. Right? Emotionally, if you cannot connect with your boss, that's where it's from the start, from the middle, that's where problems will come up along the way. So the first tip, right, as you talk about managing the emotional distance, especially during this time is, when was the last time you asked after your boss? So tip number one, check in. Checking in with your boss and not waiting for your boss to ask you, how are you coping working from home? No, when was the last time you asked your boss, how are things going for you? Like what you did just now, how was your weekend? It took less than 20 seconds. It made me feel at ease and I feel even happier to share. All right, so that's the first tip. Check in emotionally with your boss. Don't wait till when things go wrong, then you do that. It will be too late. And the second tip here, when you talk about managing up, it is also about knowing what makes your boss tick and what ticks him or her off. And that again, if you know that from the start, there will be little or even no situations where things will go wrong, because you will know when to approach your boss, how to approach your boss, what is the best timing. Like we know the weather forecast of our bosses, and that's where it is a higher chance that we can get things across, whether it is face-to-face or virtually. Sounds good?
Maxine,
I was like going on and on, but I thought maybe let me check in with you. Are you there? That's the challenge of virtual, right? I can't see you. So.
We reaffirm that it sounds good. Whelan, go ahead.
Thank you.
Well, Maxine, I was just wondering if there's any difference between managing up and sucking up.
Absolutely. In fact, just last week, I was conducting a keynote for a private bank in Singapore on this topic, managing up. I was speaking to a group of fresh graduates who just joined a bank, and they asked me that same question. And the leader herself, the HR director, human resource director, she said some of her colleagues say that she is constantly sucking up to her boss. So I asked her, what behaviors have you been demonstrating that make people think that way? And she said the simple act of preparing his favorite coffee every morning. So I told her, and that's what I'm going to share with our listeners right now, if that is the only thing that you ever do is to bring coffee to your boss, that will be downright, outright sucking up. So managing up, one of the things would be to do things that make your boss tick. So I told her, you're doing just that. You know the type of coffee that he likes, when he likes it, and that is one. Other areas you need to work on is, of course, to do your job well and exceed expectations. Because when you're constantly good at your work while you're doing all those nice little things, it's no longer seen as, sucking up to a boss. Because if you can demonstrate value, and that leads me to my third point, is to increase your indispensability factor. You know the word indispensable? Nobody in this world is indispensable. But the more indispensable you are, which means the longer it takes for your boss to replace you, that means that relationship is tighter. So especially during this virtual period where the boss cannot just go, Jenny, bring me this. Can you photocopy? He can't just call people around the office. If you can preempt what does your boss need, you know in advance what's the legacy he wants to leave behind, and you do things to help him or her achieve his goal, he or she will feel that, gosh, what will I do without you? So when you can cover all areas and not just his or her personal whims and fancies, favorite drink, that will no longer be sucking up, but that will be truly managing up. There you go.
Right. Would you like sugar with your coffee, ma'am? Well, we are hearing from
I do.
Maxine is founder of international training and consulting firm Global Max Academy. Are you having success in managing up, managing your boss, your supervisor, the one who is actually officially supposed to be managing you? Well, we'd like to hear from you if you got experiences having to manage up, or if you got questions about it. Maxine's online right now to take your questions. And the number to reach us on by voice would be 669-11938. Or if you'd like to text us, you can do so at 963-11938. You talked about, trying to build the emotional connection. But what if your boss is really all about operations? He's all about, fixed targets, about dollars and cents, about meeting KPIs, forget about relationships. They don't matter to him or her. How do you go about trying to make inroads in that area where your boss is just as cold as ice?
I can relate to that from personal experience. So before I became a business owner, I worked for several organizations. And there was at this point in my career where I had 4 different bosses at the same time. Yes, you heard me right. 4 of them. And each of them had different personalities. That means I have to report to each and every one of them. It was a medium-sized consulting firm. And then there will be some of my bosses who will go like, hey, Maxine, how are you? They initiate. And when I chat back, it's so comfortable because that's who I am. But I do have this boss. He is from a country, which I don't want to mention, otherwise it will sound like it's biased. But the country style is very, let's do things the way it is. Small talk later. We have no time for small talk. And each time when I do when I go like, hey, and I speak in my cheerful voice, he will frown at me like I'm so fluffy and I'm so superficial and make me feel bad about myself. And after a while, and this was 15 years ago, if I had known what I know today, I would have done a better job at managing him then. But now as I look back in retrospect and having coached thousands of people, professionals on this topic, if you have bosses who are very task-oriented, you need to get the job done and out of the way first before you can create inroads for small talk or checking in. That means you do the reverse. Instead of starting a virtual call or an actual meeting, I go, hey boss, how was your weekend? The boss will be like, what weekend? Let's get down to shop right away. And then you go, so mean. Or even if you go, good morning, boss, the boss will be like, what's so good about the morning? And then your whole day is gone. But instead you go, hey boss, I've got what you wanted, prop, 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 prop. What are your thoughts? And once the boss, and he finishes what he or she says, by the way, boss, how was your weekend? 90% chance, higher chance that he or she will go, oh, my weekend was pretty good. Because in his or her mind, the job has been done and is gotten out of the way. So in summary, as long as we are human beings made of flesh and blood, we all yearn for emotional connection. Just that it is in different degrees and different sequence. Would that be logical to you? Right? You need to know that what style is your boss so that you can adopt your approach and then decide whether you should talk shop first or should you make inroads by doing that emotional connection.
Yeah, that's a refreshing change. Oftentimes you think that you really need to break the ice by making small talk first, but in some sense where a supervisor or your boss may be, not exactly predisposed to wanting to make small talk first, get the job done, you show me the results first, and then we can, have any room to make any small talk that we want to. Yeah,
it's
so
true.
very, very refreshing there. Thank you, Maxine.
You're welcome, Stanley. Yes,
Yes, Maxine, what happens if you have a boss who really is incompetent and can't make up his or her mind and gives you, extra projects to do, and these are to you a waste of time and you end up not achieving your targets anyway? How do you manage up in such a situation?
Well, that's such an excellent question, and I think a lot of listeners are dying to hear that. My advice, step number 1, assess your boss again. I think many of us, consciously or subconsciously, we think our boss is incompetent. So step number 1 is to determine, is he or she really incompetent? Because all human beings judge, right? I look at you, I work with my boss for a few seconds, for a year or so, I confirm and I condemn this boss that he doesn't know what she or she is doing. It's giving me all this rubbish projects that's not helping me in my career. Another way to look at it is to talk to people around who knows your boss. You have heard the term tough love. Some bosses may seem to look like they're dumping stuff on you, but if you get a chance to talk, because this is again from personal experience, I used to think my boss was doing that to me. And after speaking to other people and other colleagues, and they shared with me, they said the boss never seemed to trust anybody with all these projects. And he chose you because he thinks that you can do the job. So I realized that, oh my gosh, all these while I was thinking my boss was just bullying me. But from the experience, I realized that I have become more experienced than all my fellow consultants. I've learned a lot more because I was thrown into the deep sea and I had to learn to struggle. So that's step 1, assess if your boss is truly incompetent. Second step, after you assess, really, they are really incompetent, what do I do? Again, please don't immediately go and complain or bypass your boss. That will be the last thing you do. Just think about it. If you go complain to HR and say, my boss is incompetent and not, do you think your human resource manager is going to report your manager, or is he or she going to get rid of you? Because again, I have seen many of my students who have attended and they showed my courses and they told me they reported to the HR, and before they knew it, they were called for meetings. They were transferred to departments, like in a way demotion, because they have become like almost bad-mouthing the boss. So second thing is avoid doing that, but instead talk to someone whom you can trust in the organization or even outside the organization, who will have a very fresh pair of eyes and they're very objective. They can share with you, yeah, perhaps you need to take note who are the other decision makers other than your boss. Please don't be totally dependent on just your boss for your progress. In every organization, there's never one person who's accountable for a project. Okay, maybe there's a person in charge, but there are people involved as well. Get to know them. Better still, if you know your boss's boss, don't go up to him to complain, but share with your boss's boss the projects that you have been working with your incompetent boss. Instead of focusing on how lousy your boss is, identify the missing gaps, what your boss is not doing or you wish that he could be doing, and you fill up those gaps. And when you can present it together with your boss, that achieves 2 purposes. First of all, you make your boss look good. Okay, just like what Stanley said just now, be careful not to sound like you're sucking up. Huh? It's not like, wow, boss, you did all this, let him claim the credit. No, you identify the gaps that your boss has not been doing or giving you projects that you thought was not actually useful, and you found projects that are useful. You do it together, and when you present to other management or other stakeholders within the project, And that's where they will recognize that you have talents that they didn't know of. So through those avenues, not only will your stakeholders have a better idea, like, oh, wow, so you have actually, I can see how you're making your boss look good, how value added have you created for the project. And that's where there will be opportunities for advancement when more people other than your boss knows what you're doing. There you go. So here are some of the quick tips. So don't assume your boss is lousy. And if he or she is really lousy, work around it by getting more stakeholders involved. In Singapore, we call this sometimes you have to wayang a bit. Wayang means you have to put, or you cannot just say, yes, my boss will know. Somehow, someone in this world will know how good I am. It's not going to happen. You have to make yourself visible.